Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and it's time for another one of those garden tours brought to you by my sponsors, Vessi Seeds and Safest Gardening Products. Almost all the seeds in my garden this season were provided by Vessi Seeds, and if I have a problem with the pest, I use one of the solutions offered, for the organically minded gardener by Safest Gardening Products. But more on that later. It's middle of September. It's very, very warm. We haven't had any frost yet. And a lot of things happening in the garden, a lot of things coming out of the garden this season. Very busy, harvesting things right now. The goldfish, they're around. I put a little bit of bread to see if I could entice them into showing themselves. Maybe I'll bring the camera over and show you. They're kind of around, but they're still being a bit lazy. I don't normally feed them. I just leave them to fend for themselves, but maybe once a week I'll put like a little bit of bread out there just to convince them I'm not the enemy. So anyway, with no further ado, let's get started with the garden tour. Go. Okay, so here we are at the entrance. I've harvested the potatoes that were there. I realized the ones I planted here were just a hodgepodge of different varieties, really small ones that I'd saved from the previous year. So I had like maybe 4 different kinds of potato growing in here. Well, they all turned out pretty good despite the fact that it's a shady spot. But the soil here is just this was horse manure years ago. It's just the softest, nicest stuff you could imagine. This might be some of the best soil in my garden. So again, speaks to the value of using horse manure in a garden. These squash are, I don't know what they are, to tell you the truth. When I planted these, I thought they were Georgia candy roaster, because that's the kind of seeds they were. And they're my own saved seeds. So they must have crossed. This is not what Georgia candy roaster look like. They're long and sort of narrow. The right color, but Georgia candy roaster are long and narrow. And these are more sort of a jack-o'-lantern shape. So I think the Georgia candy roaster must have cross-pollinated with another pumpkin in my garden and created this new variety, which might taste good, might be the best pumpkin ever, might be the worst pumpkin ever. Who knows, right? Anyway, so we'll see what goes on, what happens with all that. So that's one of the things about saving your own seeds. You save money on seeds, but you don't know what you're going to get. If you're growing more than one variety of that thing, there could be a cross-pollination that happens. Leeks are doing pretty good. I wish they were a bit bigger. Maybe the biggest ones are an inch in diameter, so that's not a very impressive leek. But it's only September. The news has been saying this is going to be like the warmest fall ever. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. Sometimes they were speaking generally for Canada, and Canada's a big place. And weather-wise, Nova Scotia is a weird place. So it could be warm everywhere else and not so warm here, even though it's further south than everywhere else. So we'll see where all that goes. But anyway, yeah, these, I mean, they look healthy, they look good, but I would have preferred them by this point in the year to be maybe 1.5 inches in diameter. Well, it's my first year ever growing leeks, so we'll see where all that goes. I'm still happy to have them. Parsnips over there are doing great. And just a bit beyond the parsnips, we've got some really nice Swiss chard happening here. This time of year, it really seems to do well. Over here, these beans I planted earlier in the season are pretty much done, done producing. They're just producing like weird misshapen beans now, and they're sort of, bush beans are like that. They become really prolific and then they taper off. There's still the odd one, but they're slowed off. I've picked these potatoes. All the perennials here are going strong. As I've mentioned so many times, I have way too many of all of these. The French sorrel and the bloody dock. I got to do something with these beds this fall. Sort this out a bit. It's too much of all of that. I don't use it. This bed was just left to go wild this year. Just did not engage in the stewardship I should have. A weird thing happened here with my Siberian kale. Every single plant on this side, one by one, has been destroyed by something, and now this one seems to have been, yeah, there's some, you see how it's just rotted out from the inside. I've never had this happen before. Just rotting. The plant will be growing great, and all of a sudden the leaves just flop down. And something is basically bored into the core of this and affected it negatively, and all of them have been pulled out, right? Basically, whenever I see that, I just pull the whole plant out, fire it off in the woods. Right? Doesn't seem to be affecting these blue Scotch curly kale, right? But these Siberian kale, which I prefer in terms of the flavor, have all been wiped out, really negatively affected, one by one. So there's something in the soil here that's just doing something to them. It's just hollowing them out from the center out. See how this one's hollowed out? Right, and I've never had that happen in my garden before. So I think next season I'm going to have to plant my kale a good distance from this bed, right? And keep kale out of this bed for maybe 6 years. And not plant any in the adjacent bed and not plant any over there either, right? This one was pulled out of that bed a while ago and it seems to be fine. A little bit of slug damage and stuff like that, but the plant's doing okay. But anyway, that's stuff happens. You just roll with it, right? Over here we got tomatoes and eggplant. I'm letting them grow, but yeah, they should be picked. I guess they're starting to get pecked at by something. We got some decent eggplant. These tomatoes are, ripening, and we're sort of trying to deal with all that and processing them. They look a bit gnarly, but this time of year you don't worry about that. I mean, it's just about picking tomatoes. This time of year, any week could be when the frost starts. So, we just, pick anything that has any color at all. Once every couple of days you just come out and pick even this amount of color. I would pick that, right? Because you just want to take everything off the plant so that it can work on ripening everything else, right? So I got some nice tomatoes coming off of here. These are I think they're like a beef steak, I think. Very productive plants. These little cherry tomatoes that I planted in with my garlic, they were of the same variety and were planted at the same time as these ones. These ones are completely done producing. There's three plants here, and they're just basically, you can just tell they're done. Right? These were delayed by the fact that they were planted in with the garlic, because the garlic was getting all the sunlight. Basically, the sunlight these plants would have gotten would have been sort of dappled by the garlic stalks. But since I've harvested the garlic, I don't know, early August, these have just almost doubled in size every week. So it seems like that, right? But all that being said, how many cherry tomatoes do you need? I know people like them, but yeah, it's a lot of cherry tomatoes. Anyway, that's just 3 plants, right? So that cherry falls tomato that I got from Vessie's. If you're a fan of cherry tomatoes, I think that's the plant you want. Over here we got another bed of beans that's basically done. I've just let it go a bit wild. This was a variety called Provider. You can save the seeds from these, so I will do that because I really like Provider. Nice potato garden here, and the potatoes are all ready to be harvested. And I got some really, this one seemed to trying to find some, produce some pretty big. I think these are like classic russets. They need to be harvested. I might do that today. So I'm curious to see the difference between the ones harvested here and the ones harvested from over there. Because it's more shady over there. This is more sunny here, right? Because that direction is south and it's all trees and stuff like that. All right, so that might make a good video. You can't go wrong with a potato harvesting video, but also just to see, number one, how variety matters, because these classic russets tend to be a big potato anyway, and everyone I've pulled out of this garden has been big, but I'm curious to see if that size sort of dwindles as you get towards the shadier part of that bed. Well, we'll see. Plenty of beets. I got to harvest these today. Harvest some today because we're having company over for dinner. But man, some of these beets are just, I mean, this variety, some of them are, look at this here. I'll pull this one because I got to harvest today anyway. Some of these, but that looks like a turnip. That is over 4 inches in diameter at the widest point, right? This variety, I mean, it's a variety you can grow and do an early harvest, but I tend to just leave them in the ground because they get bigger and bigger and bigger. Why not, right? Just thin them sort of thing. Every time I need some, I thin a bit, but my goodness, look at that. Looks like a turnip. Over here, my cucumbers are basically done. I'm getting a couple weird ones, you know, but the plants are done. And now I got lots of parsley over here, and the dill is basically done over here. This late planting of beans that I did right here, because I just this year I did not plant enough beans. I'm going to put that in my notes. I took my beans for granted, and I didn't get a lot of beans this year, not the usual amount. So yeah, I have to definitely do a better job of that next year. Anyway, these are all flowering, and you know, if the frost can hold off another couple weeks, who knows what might happen here. But yeah, probably too late. I mean, I planted these like the end of July or something like that, right? You can only do so much with our growing season here. But I get cilantro here, and I get some pretty, you know, nice carrots. Let's pull this one here. Yeah. Oh, that's one of those ones with many legs. It must have been a rock. Sometimes when they grow down, they hit a rock, they develop legs like that. But some of them are, I thought this one would be big. Some of them are quite large and quite impressive. Anyway, another bad year for carrots for me. I didn't plant as many as I should. Well, no, I had a lot of gardens fail. That's basically what happens. So, you know, I normally like to have 2 beds of carrots. I planted 2 beds of carrots, and I had to replant each bed about 3 times because something just kept wiping them all out, not quite sure what. First year ever, but you know, persistence pays off. I did get some, but not as many as normal. The problem with carrots did not carry over to parsnips. These ones all came in fine. What I think I did wrong with carrots is possibly just, you know, I put plastic over them. Maybe I had too much heat or something like that. You never know. You write down your ideas of what you think you did wrong, and you don't do that thing the next season and see what happens. You just do little experiments, right? Anyway, these parsnips are doing great. The grapes are not ripe yet. Hopefully they turn ripe before the frost comes, right? But they're almost full size. These grapes don't get much larger than this size, right? Maybe like 1/2 inch in diameter, 1.5 centimeters, right? But yeah, they're not. There should be a purple color. They're starting. Here's a bunch over here. A little bit of color happening there. Right, nice clusters anyway, right? But yeah, not ripe yet. I'm gonna have a lot this year. Oh, there's a couple. Check that out. Right in there, there's a little bit of color in there. A little bit of, oh, not purple yet, but getting there. At the base of the grapes, I've got potatoes all along this perimeter, and they've pretty much stopped growing. So I mean, they're ready for harvest, right? Here's the raspberries that I got from Vesey's, just bare root raspberries, and they've really come in well. And I even got a few raspberries off of them this year. Not, you know, not enough to make jam or anything like that, but you know, I planted, how many here? A dozen in this bed on the south side of that little apple tree there. So I expect next year to get pretty good raspberry production. This bed here where I had peas down the middle and potatoes on either side. Peas are done, potatoes are done. Potatoes need to be harvested, and this pea trellis needs to be dismantled. So I'll be doing that in the next few days. These strawberries, I keep saying I need to mulch them, and I keep putting it off. I have the mulch I need now. I just got to get around to it. Just waiting for a nice day. It's really warm and muggy and sticky today, and I can tell you, I'm just out here shooting a video, and I can already feel myself getting overheated and not even doing anything. So this is probably not the best day to be out doing gardening, unless you want to get on a serious sweat, which I don't. Zucchini are still producing. Ah, damn, how did I miss that one? That's way too big. That's like 1 foot long. You're supposed to harvest them when they're maybe 8 inches long, right? Anyway, still edible. You can still use them, and I keep meaning to do a video on what to do with things that are too big like that, zucchini and cucumbers. I never got around to it this year. I only do cooking videos when there's nobody in the house, because it's too much of an imposition on my family to say, like, don't come anywhere near the kitchen for an hour, right? So, you know, when I've got a day, a day off or something like that, and I'm in the mood, I do the cooking videos. But anyway, yeah, that's a bit too big. But yeah, the zucchini are still producing, which which is rare. Usually they're sort of given up by this time of the year. There's a nice small one. That's these Lebanese Magda, which I've mentioned before, just great. Anyway, there's another big one. How did I miss that? I was just out harvesting these days ago. I didn't notice any of this. Look at that one, another big one. Just squash are so weird in the fall. Things just show up out of nowhere and just appear. Anyway, they're still totally edible like that. You can still use them. They're just nicer when they're small because you don't have to worry about seeds. There's a size where the sort of inner flesh has no seeds. And then there's a size when they're like this, where the core is all seeds, and you kind of have to scoop that stuff out because they're not pleasant. But these are such a tender squash that you can still eat them even when they've sort of seeded up a bit like that. Over here, this was a garlic bed that when the garlic were done, I just plucked some squash out from a spot over there and stuck them in. And these squash are not as big and as impressive as those that are growing in the beds where the original plants were grown, but I mean, these plants had to be thinned, and instead of just tossing them in a compost pile, I stuck them in a bed that was basically done for the season, and I'm getting squash. I mean, they're here's some butternuts over here, right? There's another sweet mama over here, right? So I mean, yeah, better than nothing, right? That's the way I look at it anyway. Some more cherry tomatoes over here, and just a little update on the strawberries that I planted this year. New strawberries from Bessie Seeds. These are June bearing. They're coming in strong. These are well mulched. They're doing great. Carrot that I let go to seed. I may have waited too long with these. They're definitely ready to be harvested as seed, but I just need a couple days of dry weather. I need some sun and dryness. And if I harvest them like this, they'll just go all nasty and moldy. So we'll see if that happens. Blueberries are basically done for the season. This giant tomato is really producing some serious tomatoes over here. People wonder what you do with asparagus. You just let them grow. Really, once you're done harvesting your asparagus, you let them grow and gather energy for the following year. At some point, I'll cut these stalks off and just sort of lay them all down. And look at all these seeds here. Each of these could conceivably become an asparagus plant, right? That's what the seed looks like on asparagus. Your asparagus are happy if they're putting out seeds like that, right? So these are all asparagus that I started from seed, and I'm anticipating next year, I know I say this every year, but next year's the year I'm going to get good asparagus. The apples on my apple trees are coming in pretty good. I get some nice ones here, right? I don't treat these with anything, so they tend to have, a lot of imperfections and so on, but, these are some nice looking apples. I don't know what variety this particular one is. I think they're Honeycrisp, but, I mean, they look pretty good to me, right? So hopefully another month or so, they'll start to come out. This must be another variety here. I don't know what these are, but these look almost ready. I just, when I notice the apples are falling off the tree, that's when I know they're ready to be harvested. That's a general rule. These enormous sunchokes that I got from chokedup.ca. This one, that must be 10 feet high. So I'm really curious to know. Yeah, they're from 8 to 10 feet high this year, and I just stuck them in the ground this spring. So I am really curious to see what's going on underneath the hood, because if you know anything about sunchokes, sure, they make a big magnificent plant, but it's what's going on under the ground that you want. You want the roots. So yeah, I mean, look at the thickness of the stalks, right? I've never had a sunchoke this big, so I'm really curious to see what kind of production is going on underneath the ground there and what they taste like. Of course, over here we got the beets, a little bit of a weedy bed, but there's plenty of good beets in there. They're going to be picked soon. These are ones I grew for canning. They're like the long cylindrical type, like that, right? Long cylindrical type. They're sort of easy to peel, right? Like a big fat carrot sort of thing. and very easy for processing. So despite the bit of weeds in there, they still got, you know, some decent beets, and there's bigger ones in there, even though they look somewhat forlorn. These ones grow weird. They have, like, you know, very unimpressive foliage, but decent beet production, right? So I like them. Big parsnips over here, even despite the fact that they're growing in the shade of this tree, right? Because that direction is south. And despite the fact that they're growing in the shade of this apple tree, still pretty good production on these parsnips. I mean, these are almost 3 feet high, the foliage. So, I mean, they're going to be some nice big ones, right? I can just sort of see down in there that they're going to have some big crowns. This kale is doing great. No problems over here, just lots of big, beautiful kale, and we've been sort of harvesting and blanching and freezing that. If you haven't seen my video on how to do that, just look, take a look at kale blanching and freezing, maritime gardening. Just do a Google search on that. You'll probably see my video on how to do that. These Egyptian, I forgot what they were called, Egyptian walking onions. Still producing nice little greens that I can use in salads and stir fries, and I actually really like these in an omelet once a week, usually on Saturday. I make an omelet for myself. I'm really the only one in the house that likes them. My kids like omelet, but they just like bacon in it. That's it, egg and bacon omelet. They haven't really developed the taste for all these other different things, right? But anyway, I really like this more so than putting onion. I like this, it's a more gentle flavor, the green, right? And look, you can see a lot of these heads, right? Need to be sort of planted. Some of them are just planted themselves. And, you know, I've just decided to sort of let this garden be I think I've used this term before, a lazy hippie garden, right? So I'm just going to mulch it and leave it. You know, I'm going to break some of these clumps up and just scatter them around. I put a pile of them over here, because I'm going to, you know, sort of give them away to friends and stuff. All you got to do this time of year is stick that in the ground, you know, like, so you'd plant it just so that the tip is sticking, just like you'd planting an onion set. You just stick it in like that, right? So that the tip is level with the top of the soil. And yeah, I mean, they'll plant themselves. You can see like this one here, it's planting itself, right? Well, you'll get better bulb production if you space them out and give each one of the bulbs its own space, right? Each one of those, of course, they'll do better. It really depends on what you're looking for. If you're trying to grow them so that you can, you know, save the sort of oniony shallot type thing, then you want to space them out. If you're only growing them for the greens, then you can just sort of let nature take its course. It really depends on what you want. But yeah, if you definitely want, this one's starting to grow. If you want like a sort of shallot type thing, which you can get, then you have to space them out. There's no way around that. If you let them grow in a clump, you know, if you just leave something like this in the ground to sort itself out, you won't get any size. I mean, you'll get some, but, you know, suffice it to say, you'll get better size of the actual onion or shallot or whatever you want to call that, if each one has its own space. These onions were just onion sets. I think they were Styrian, and just using these up, you know, every time I need an onion to come out here and harvest about 6, and we're just about used them all up. But this was pretty much an easy garden, you know. I mean, I just stuck the onions in the ground and let them grow and take them as I need them. So, you know, it's always worth, and, you know, just if you haven't had success with onions, give them their own space, give them lots of sun, give them good soil, lots of sun, so on and so forth. You know, some plants don't need your best spaces. Onions really, it makes a difference. If they don't have lots of sun and good soil, you won't get any size. At least that's my experience. This bed here, I've been meaning to do a bit of a video on this. This was a broccoli bed. I planted them too close together. And really, I should have, of all the beds in my garden, right, the kale and the broccoli this year got attacked more by pests than in previous years. And last year, I hardly had any pests. So I'm going to do a dedicated video speaking to that, so I'm not going to get on about it here. But I mean, I got broccoli out of this, but better stewardship would have been more productive for sure. These Sweet Mama squash are doing great. You can see the size difference, right? These ones were not moved ever, and they're about, 50% bigger than the ones I showed earlier that were in the previous garlic bed. Right, this is about the size you get with these Sweet Mamas. They're just a nice, like one of those is a nice side dish for a meal, probably with leftovers as well, right? Here's another one here. But, about an 8-inch diameter, maybe a few pounds, 2-3 pounds of size. Just the perfect size for a side dish for a meal. Not too big, not too small, right? And they store really well, the Sweet Mama. They taste great and they store well. I think they're going to be a regular fixture in the garden. Everybody likes them. These cabbage, they got some nice size heads, but I have not treated this bed at all with anything. When the seedlings were tiny, I had to use slug bait. But aside from that, since they've become like decent sized cabbage, I haven't done anything. And every one of these, when I harvest them and use them in the kitchen, they're full of slugs. Just full. Slugs and caterpillars. So again, I'm going to do a dedicated video on this, explaining what I think is going on here. But suffice it to say, I have not used anything with these except for when they were really tiny. And yeah, I thought I had a sort of balance between pests and predators in my garden, because last year I didn't need to use anything. But whatever was going on last year isn't going on this year. And that happens, right? That's just the way it goes. This was potatoes. They're all gone. These are the butternut squash. I got some really nice ones here. Huh? That's a good size. Kind of when you see them in the store, they don't tend to be that fat. Might be a little bit longer, but these ones seem to be like a short, fat one, right? And the plants are short and fat. So maybe that's just the variety. But anyway, I mean, butternut squash is a common variety you'll see in the grocery store. These, I harvested all the potatoes that were growing out here outside the garden enclosure, and I made a video of that and talked about that. But as is always the case with pumpkins and squash, you get like a late fall rally. So I noticed about a week ago a pumpkin, and I got one growing right in here. It came through the fence and it's growing on this side. And geez, almost every week this pumpkin doubles in size, and it hasn't even changed color yet, right? So it's not even close to being ready, right? These are supposed to be like a jack-o'-lantern type pumpkin. It's not one you'd really grow for food, but this would have been the size of a softball just a week ago, right? So it really taken off, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was another one that I can't see somewhere, because there's always like stealth pumpkins growing somewhere. Always the case of part of why I love growing them. I take a real childlike pleasure in finding them just showing up in places. Anyway, this garden was not the best. It's, the soil's never been amended. It's just basically, the wild soil. And this is the second year I've grown stuff in it. And that's not a bad. It could be bigger, right? These are supposed to be a very large pumpkin, but it's not bad for doing nothing, right? So anyway, that's where we are, middle of September 2021. It's been a very good year, some ups, some downs. Now, most of the problems in the garden really probably just a result of me not attending to things when I should have, which is almost always the case. And don't beat yourself up over those things. I mean, sometimes you just have years where you're too busy to be like, to achieve a perfect execution in your garden. That happens. You just gotta roll with it. It's frustrating. It's like, oh, if only I'd done that thing last week. If only I'd done that thing 2 weeks ago. And you can't go back in time. Make a note of it. Give yourself a reminder for next year, and then give yourself a break if you don't follow that good advice, because there's always another year, right? And it's not the end of the world if things go wrong. You just get on with it. You're still, if you're planting and you're growing, there's still lots of things to eat. There's still plenty of things to use, right? So it's just the way it goes. It would be different if you were trying to make a living, right? But this is just, for me, this is just a food source, and trying to grow as much food with the least amount of work. And for me, if I have a day when I just don't feel like doing this, I don't do it, right? That's just the way I like to do it. It's, I got a full-time job. There's plenty of things in life you end up having to do. You can't say no to, right? That's just the way things go. So it's, with the garden, I enjoy being out here and I enjoy doing it, but there's some days I feel like doing something else. Tomorrow, I'm going fishing with a buddy of mine, and that's more important than harvesting potatoes or pickling beets or, or whatever. Right? I'll get around to that stuff the next day. Mañana, right? So, hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. Don't forget to click the bell so you know when I make a new video. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching. Hey folks, if you want to help support my podcast and my YouTube channel, check out my sponsors, Vessie's Seeds and Safer's Gardening Products. For Vessie's, go to their website, vessies.com, use my coupon code GAVS21, and you'll get free shipping as long as there's a pack of seeds in your order and you don't have an oversized item in your order. Just check out the description. The details are in the description box of this video. If you want to buy stuff from Safer's Gardening Products, you can buy all the things I use from Vessie's Seeds and you'll get free shipping that way. They sell BTK, the slug and snail killer, and the end all that I use. Just check out the tools and accessories link on their website. But you can also, if you're in Canada, you can buy Safer's Gardening Products from woodstreambrands.ca. If you have an order over $69, you'll get free shipping on that. They got a wide range of products, goes well beyond the 3 things I use. I only buy things for the problems I have, right? So I don't, but they've got all kinds of products for beetles and things like that. If you're in the US, go to saferbrand.com and buy your stuff there. That's the US, if you're in US, buy from that website, order online. They offer free shipping on all orders over $45. I assume that's $45 US. So yeah, if you want to help support the channel and the podcast, they sell something you need, buy it from them. That'll help support everything I'm doing here. Thanks a lot.